This is the Gift of Gab podcast. I'm your host, Gabrielle, connecting you to the highest and flyest in the Mile High City. Follow me on all major platforms at the Gift of Gab 555. This episode is sponsored by the Ever Collection by K. Michael. Visit evercollection.nyc to get a pair of the flyest eyewear in the game. Tag me on social media in your eyewear for a shout out on the podcast. We hope that you enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Gift of Gab podcast. Tonight we have one of my very, very good friends and badass photographer, Miss Katrina with The Right One Photography. How are you doing?
What up? How we doing?
Oh, I'm fantastic as always. You brought me out to this beautiful place.
Yes. Try to keep it classic, but it's beautiful.
I've never been to here. Can you believe that?
I came here because we shot a video with the Knock over here, and that's how I actually found it.
Okay.
So shout out to Kelsey for knowing this spot originally.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, welcome. Tell me a little bit more, not about your business just yet, we'll get into that, but tell me a little bit more about Katrina.
Well, first thing, nobody calls me Katrina, so
Katrina is what you want me to say? Okay.
Realistically, most people call me the Queen these days, but
I like that.
Yeah.
So tell me more about the Queen.
Gosh, it's hard to just put yourself into words. I'm a single mom of 3. I also work a 9-to-5 job. Shout out Rise Broadband, successfully employed me for the last 5 years. Yeah, we'll plug them in there. So if you need internet service, y'all, go ahead. But and then what else do I do? I'm in school right now for business management with an emphasis on small business and entrepreneurship. There's a lot of big term goals there, but right now I'm just really comfy in the hip hop industry in Denver. So shout out to all my crazy, beautiful artist friends.
Your hip hoppers?
Yeah, my hip hoppers, hip hopolopolis.
I always giggle when that comes into my head, but I can't help it.
Yeah. But just doing the most out here, I guess.
Where are you from?
Originally, I was born in Palo Alto, but lived in South San Francisco until I was 4 or 5. I went back every summer, and then I just made my own roots out here.
So your family moved you out here. It wasn't your choice.
Right. Yeah. No. The woman who birthed me moved me out here young, but
she who shall not be named.
I almost hate saying it like that because there's an incredible artist, she who won't be named, and she's fantastic. But yes.
Oh, you're right.
Hoe, yeah.
I forgot, and we can't mix those two.
I call her my egg donor, so
Yeah. I haven't heard of an egg donor like that. That's a good one. Okay, so you said Palo something, but I don't know where that's at, but then you said San Francisco, so that's Cali, right?
Yeah. Palo Alto
Cali
isn't
to
too
Colorado.
Far.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you've been out here for a while. How did you kind of make a shift, and how did you get into wanting to own your own business and doing photography and hip hop? How did you land there?
Gosh, complacency. I was so, when people say practice what you preach, right? So I'm a great preacher, and everybody comes to me for wisdom all the time, but I never really took my own advice. So I just hate, even though my company is great to me, I hate what I do. It's very mundane and
it's the
repetitive. Yeah. It's, I wake up to go to work, even though I'm blessed to work from home and all these things, but so how did I get here? Just being a fan. I've always been a fan. I remember sneaking into shows at the Roxy at 16.
Yes.
Before it was the cool thing to go to the Roxy when it's still a little grungy.
It's still a little bit grungy.
It's still a little grungy, but
I'm not hating.
It used to be real grungy, but also, anyway, we won't go into that. But, yeah, and so I was a fan for a really dope artist out here. And it just kind of spiraled. I met Kelsey with the Knock, and I became their intern, and then one thing led to another, and I signed with Survival 7, and they put a camera in my hand, and we're like, well, if you take those pictures with your iPhone, let's see what you can do with the real thing. And everybody that I've put in front of my lens is you are really great at this. So.
I've seen you everywhere. I have only known you a couple months, and then I'm like, oh, there she is there. Oh, there she is there. So you definitely, I mean, you're definitely making a name for yourself out here.
I try. I think the biggest thing is that I really just want everyone to win. Like I really love everybody, so I don't come into it with like malice or some like I do need to be great, of course, but I'm only great if I make you great. Is how I really feel, you know. So.
I love that. I love that. So for me, when I worked, because I got to do a little photo shoot with you, and I have done so many things. Like I'm not really comfortable like being a model. I don't love to take pictures. I want to be the person that like gets to hire models. Like that's just how my mindset works. So for me, I just don't want to be like the pretty girl over here.
Oh, but you can be the pretty girl. My photos say that. My photos say that.
But when I took pictures with you, one thing I really loved was the vibe and giving directions. Like it's amazing to me how many photographers out there have like I see them in everybody's social media. And they don't say anything while they're taking pictures of you because you're like, why didn't you tell me? Or like then the pictures come out and you have like a little pot belly or whatever. Like I can
and you
tell.
Didn't tell me.
I can tell that you really want people to win. Other people are like looking at not everybody, but like just there are a lot of people out there that just don't. It's serious when you post a picture that people don't like. If you consider somebody your friend, you shouldn't do that to people, you know? And like, you don't do that. You definitely like, hey, did you like this? Did you do that? You were quick too. That's one thing I really liked. Like, there's nothing like taking a bunch of pictures or pouring your like heart into something and then having to like wonder like, where did it go? Or when you get it back and they only got like five shots.
Yeah. And then you have to purchase the rest.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, like my business model does have plans like that, but I get so edit crazy when I'm doing people's stuff because I'm excited. Like, I'm like, wow, these look great. And then so why would I only send you like 5 pictures when I want to send you 500 pictures, you know?
Yeah.
But that's just perks of working with me. I did the Ink magazine competition a couple years back, and I got pretty far in it, and it was great, but I worked with quite a few different photographers, and I think that it may have sparked like my interest in pictures because I was taking better pictures of myself than I was paying these people. And there was no direction, you know, and they're taking one picture like every 5 minutes, and I'm like, I'm paying you by the hour, and you're sending me a gallery with 100 pictures. I leave sessions with like no less than 600 pictures. If I have less than 600 pictures, I'm like, what were you doing with your time? Like, because it's not here. So, but it's, we were talking earlier, it is about being valuable. When people think of me or think of my name, I want it to be like memorable. I don't ever want them to be like, I don't really know. When I first stepped into the hip hop industry out here, my favorite part was that when I would tell somebody who I was, they're like, oh my God, I hear so much about you, but I never met you. And that like blew my mind because I'm like, who am I? But I'm just everywhere and I want to support people. And I love hip hop. Hip hop literally saved my life. Like,
me too.
Got me through the trenches, you know. I knew when you pulled up and you were bumping like 90s classic hip hop, I was like,
I am obsessed. So I have started to just branch out a little bit because I love hip hop music and I love 90s music. Like that's what I always used to listen to. But like for my real dream is to be a DJ. Like if I could figure out how to use the equipment, it would be over. But I just like I'm a girl, so like every time like some guy's like, I'll teach you, I just like show up and they're
I'll put you. She just touched my leg. Oh my God, she touched my leg, y'all.
I'm like, I don't know what you thought or what you heard about me, but no.
So I'll actually plug you in and I'll plug her in out loud because she is incredible. July, I don't know if you know who she is. She is sensational, like by far, like one of the biggest.
I already have a controller. I already have it. Like
she actually teaches, like she's a part of a group that teaches women how to be more confident in like that artistry, whether it's being a DJ or being an artist. So definitely I'll put y'all in a group chat because I think she's like super young too. And forgive me if this is wrong. She's like 22, 23. And I'm like, I want to be like you when I grow up, you know?
No, it's weird how many people I have met like that. More recently, my last episode when I interviewed Medicine Mama Kia, every time I'm around her, I'm like feeling like I'm like
She's such a fun
learning
energy.
from some like guru, and I'm older like than everybody around here, but it's just so crazy, like age and like experiences. I fully believe that this isn't our only lifetime. This isn't the only time we've been here. And so
About saying you're an old soul.
yes. And like, so for me, when I can learn from somebody younger, it might take me a little bit longer because I'm not exactly sure like what you're talking about. I'm very like old school. Like I hung out with everybody older than me. My dad had me young. All my cousins, everybody is older than me. So like where I get my taste and where I get my lingo, and it's from people that are older than me. So sometimes when I'm working with younger people, I have to be like, wait a minute, what? Like, what did you just say to me?
Yeah.
But I love the fact that like they just have these new ideas, and I'm not scared of like, oh, it has to be this way because we set the world, like you better respect your OGs or your elders. Like I really like
you should, but you know.
Yes, you should, but you should respect everybody.
Right.
Like as an older person, you should respect these young kids that have ambition. I wish that I hadn't gone through so much trauma when I was younger, because when I was 22, I had so many things happen to me the 5 years before that. They're like, it would just be different. Like I have children, so now I'm like, oh my gosh.
I don't even remember 22.
Oh, me either. Like people tell me about my graduation party from high school, and I literally cannot remember it. I cannot. I'm like,
I didn't even have a graduation.
What?
Yeah, I grew up. We grew up poor, so my mom was on housing, right? And my mom was probably one of the best con artists I've ever met in my life. So, like, she always sent me to the rich schools because I was smart as shit. But we were poor.
No, I hated that too. It was the same. So I'm from Fort Collins, and a lot of people, I always hear this from people that think that they're so street and they're so hood. Like, oh, you're just like this little white girl from Fort Collins. Like, oh. But for me, like, I really did grow up, like, I used to steal toilet paper from my school just so we had toilet paper. Like, we really did use the stove to heat up the fucking, to heat up
if you've never used a stove to heat up your house, like, I'm not sure we could even be friends.
Like, I turned 18 and was already in $10,000 worth of debt because my name had been used. And I remember the first place I called that told me, oh, well, if you know who did it, then you're going to have to turn them in. And, like, I was like, I'm not going to turn in my, like...
I'm not going to turn in my
I'm
mother.
I'm not going to do this. Like, what are you talking about? And so, like, that stuff's always been really engraved in me. So, for me, I love when I see a younger person that is ambitious, and doesn't let the distractions, especially when they come from something hard, like a harder lifestyle. I'm like, wow, I wish, like... Mine was just like substance abuse. Like I loved to like.
You all say it.
I loved to
substance
drink.
Abuse.
I loved to drink, and I just really like. I used to like to be the life of the party, and now like I try really hard not to be, but it still kind of happens. But like I try to keep it more like low key. But when I was growing up, I hated like, you know that song by I think it's by J. Cole, where he's talking about how he hates rich people. Like that was me. I was like, oh, like. You can't hang out with me. Like your parents are great. And now I'm like, I love that my son
loved me.
I love that my son hangs out with all the really like well off kids, because I'm like,
it was shout out to oh my god, what was her name? Courtney Walgren. Her mom bought my homecoming dress my freshman year. The thing was I never carried myself as being poor, so like everyone just always thought I was wealthy until it was time for the money to come out. And then it was like,
And they're like, oh.
Yeah, like when Jenna Miller had her birthday at Waterworld, and you just had to pay $50. I'll sneak in before you get that $50. But shout out to her mom because she paid too. But it was crazy living in a world like that. And I feel like, you know, I'm not poor by any means like we were, but even my kids, like I put them in the better schools because the education plans are better there, unfortunately. And I have the luxury to be like, no, we're going to go to
We live in Colorado too.
Yes,
like for me, that is why people say those comments about you can't be hood or you can't be street coming from here.
Yeah, because when I go home, I'm not different.
Because you have
out there.
opportunities. Like you have opportunities here. I think a lot, but I think the biggest problem in Colorado is, again, like substance abuse. I think a lot of people don't realize that, like, a lot of these kids' parents, like, are lit, and that's what it is. It's not because it's not available. Like, the opportunity, the schools, the thing, they are better in certain areas. Like, I remember when I first moved out to Denver from Fort Collins, I lived in West Denver, and like the movers were like, "Are you really?" I had this beautiful condo in Fort Collins, right across from the community college. You could see the sunset. It was beautiful, and I moved into this house like everybody else on the street was Section 8, like, and I move in. There's like crackheads next door, like. Super nice, but you know, like I'm glad I didn't buy this house.
I've had some good crackhead neighbors. You can't tell me shit about some crackhead neighbors. And, if they got a house and they're crackheads,
the way that my kids were acting at that school was out of control. Like, they would come home, I'm cold-blooded, is what they would say. And I'd be like, what did you just say? And they'd be, like, trying to peel off their shirts to, like, be wearing their wife beaters. And I'm like, it's so funny when people correct me. They're like, it's called a muscle shirt. I don't beat women. It's a wife beater. And I'm like, it's a wife beater. But it just was crazy because the school, they would come home with, like, fruit. The school was always giving them like free food, all the funding and all the programs, but most of those kids, like, their parents aren't even like paying any attention to them. So that's where they had, so the actual schooling, the actual classes and what they were learning just was really lacking.
What we teach kids in school, like, okay, let me get on my soapbox for a minute, because history-wise, we don't teach them the truth. You know what I mean? Like, none of that is factual.
I tried to pull my son to homeschool him, and he hated it. I get calls
every year, multiple times a year, because I tell my kids, like, the reality of history, the shit that they wait until, like, high school to just give you a peek into, you know what I mean? And I feel like our curriculum, like, growing up, our curriculum wasn't as fluffy, still very fluffy, but definitely not as fluffy now. But I am that parent that gets a call like, so, talking about pilgrims today, and your daughter said it was when all the white people came over and killed the Indians. I'm waiting for you to contradict me here. If you can tell me that that's not what happened, then I will gladly tell her the correct story. But until then, don't worry, I'll wait. But I don't want my kids to be fooled, because they live a much better life than I was ever privileged to. But at the same time, you know, there's still real shit you got to pay attention to.
I mean, if you don't tell your kids the real, it's going to happen one day in life.
And like, I remember the girl who learned about the Holocaust too late, you know, and she was German and like very proud German family, learned about the Holocaust. I happened to got my period that day and be in the nurse's office when she came in having a panic attack. Like, because you did kill all those people. Not you, but like they did kill all those people, you know, and people can't handle that. Or you get older and like, I remember when I was young, some of the things, like, because I come from the generation where, like, we didn't have Google. So parents told us weird shit, like you would turn into a prune if you stayed in the bathtub too long, and, like, just weird stuff, like, that they just made us believe. And so when I was in my early 20s or, like, turned an adult, I would literally be, like, arguing with people about things that, like, now you can Google and find out, oh, that's wrong. Because I was taught that by somebody I trusted, or because I learned it in school. And it just makes you... But that's how folklore and legends and shit have always been passed down.
Yep.
And we could get real deep there.
I know. It's just crazy how times kind of change, but they kind of don't. Like, things evolve, but they don't really change. Like, when people are always talking about how it's so bad in the world right now, I'm like, do you know that, like, just my grandma, that's 2 generations up, she was not allowed to get divorced without proving what she did wrong for him to let her go. Like, that's how you couldn't
open a bank account or go see a doctor without your husband's consent.
And that was just right there. So, like, there was that going on. Like you mentioned, the Holocaust, like all these, back when they couldn't take fingerprints, like how many crimes do you think were really being committed? But now we have this beautiful thing called the internet. So now, like, you just see more stuff. It doesn't mean that it's actually more crime. It's just more accessible for you.
Yeah.
Whew, well, that was a little side tangent. So since we both love hip hop, I want to know who some of your like inspirations were. Not locally, we'll get locally next, but like wherever when you started, like who's your favorite? Like who's your inspirations? It doesn't have to be one.
Let's see, who brought me into hip hop? Eminem brought me in. Eminem and
Me too.
Nelly brought me into hip hop.
Me too. We must be close to the same age because like that little
I'm
Band-Aid.
31 or 32,
oh yeah, I'm 32.
somewhere around
or I'm
there.
33.
Yeah. I'm somewhere in there. But yeah, I remember somebody burnt me the explicit version of Eminem's. Oh my god. I can't think of the name of it, but he's standing in front of the curtain with the.
Oh, the Eminem show.
Oh yes, yeah. Thank you.
That one's my like that one. So when I do karaoke, one of the songs I do is "Without Me." Like people laugh so hard, they're like, "Now I see why you did that," and I'm like. Oh yeah, there's like a couple albums out there in the world that I know every single word to, and like I can get into character. And like for the funniest story about Eminem for me is my son. He was probably about like 7 years old when this happened, but my dad, like I found his Dr. Dre Chronic album, and then I found like the one before the Eminem show. In his CDs, and like he usually listened to like classic rock like Metallica and stuff like that, but he had a little bit of like hip hop music over here. So I find these CDs and I'm like, what is this? Like this is like crack to me. Like what is this? I love this. My dad's been a Eminem fan for a really long time. Well, one of our family songs, like our family movie that we love is Joe Dirt. Like that's what we all watch. We watch Joe Dirt, and the real Slim Shady. Like all my sisters since they were babies, my son, like they all know this song, and like my dad used to be like, I'm the real Slim Shady. So when my son was like 7 years old, he serious is like hell asks me, is your dad like really the real Slim Shady? And I was like, this is hilarious because my son calls him Big Papa too. And like because my parents weren't old enough to be grandparents, so they wanted to come up with these cool names. And I'm like, you have my son calling you Big Papa and thinking you're the real Slim Shady. Like, what is going on?
That's funny.
Yeah, Nelly was like my favorite first because the radio was where I got it. Like I have white parents.
I'm like, those were the first CDs I bought, but realistically, I listened to KS 107.5 all the time. So whatever was on there, I could just sing it on repeat. When you said Dr. Dre the Chronic, I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, that was that was one of the main ones. So for me, I always make jokes because I love Biggie more than Tupac, but I do like Tupac too. Like when I was a dancer, my name was Alizé. Like people used to try to argue with me about Tupac lyrics, and I'm like, I know what I'm talking about, but
I love them both. You can't make me pick.
I didn't. I just like Biggie's swag more. Like that's all it is. I just like if I had to pick, like that's what I would pick. But I just like to get into these hip hop conversations, so I've dissected it. But like people are always like, oh my gosh, do you remember when Tupac died? And I'm like, I was like 4 or 6. Like, no, I don't remember when it happened. I know it happened, but I promise you, like, I wasn't 4, like, listening. Back then, hip hop music wasn't, it wasn't widely accepted. Like, it wasn't, even when I was in high school, like, people would call the cops on you if you were bumping hip hop music in the parking lot. Like they hated it. And now it's like teachers are making TikTok dances to hip hop. It's so crazy how times change. I'm trying to think of who else, like, cause I loved G Unit, like at the time, like of whatever.
Oh yeah. G Unit was a thing. G Unit was a real thing.
Yes.
God, there was a lot. Realistically, I'm terrible too with names. Like I'm the person that will just put it on shuffle and then heart everything that I like. Doesn't matter who it's by.
I love that.
Because I'm big on lyrics. So like beats are cool and stuff, and I love anything with heavy bass. But like if you fuck me up with some lyrics, though,
that's why E40 is my favorite, because I just love what he has to say. Like I love what he has to say, and like some people don't understand him, but I'm like, he is giving you game, like in all of his songs. And like, I don't love all of his new stuff as much, but that's why I say he's my favorite, just because of like what he's talking about. And a lot of that, like, I don't know, it's Throwback Thursday, so I was like listening to like Mobb Deep and all that on the way here. I'm like,
course.
oh, I love it. So what about new artists like today? Well, who do you find yourself listening to today?
So I listen to a lot of local music, but I'm really big on R&B too.
Yes.
So it just depends on my mood, because I fuck with a lot of Thames, a lot of Thames, because I just love her, and her messages always like get me in the right mood. Jessie Reyez is high on my list too. Yeah, she's superb. Her last album,
one
Jessie,
where she
was
like, you didn't know I was crazy, I would have blown up your car. I'm like,
yeah. That's my straight jacket's custom made. Yeah. And those aren't even like hip hop; those are just regular. But I'm trying to think. Actually, hold on. Let me whip out the phone real quick.
I have a hard time when I start thinking about new people too, because like I love Lizzie Jeff. I really like that she has.
Oh my God, SZA is my thing. I just found this chick, and I don't think she's new, but she's new for me. Chinese Kitty, like.
Oh yeah, I only know about her because I used to watch That Love and Hip Hop. I don't watch TV anymore, but
I hate reality shows like that. Like when they say don't meet your heroes, holy shit!
So
Love and Hip Hop does that for me.
I stopped, but when I stopped watching TV, I really recognized, like, I would be watching. So after my sister passed away, I watched like the Gilmore Girls and all the shows that she liked, and at the same time, I was watching reality shows, and I would be like getting off work and feel like crying, and like feel like I'm like fighting with my boyfriend, or like. All this happened because I was watching drama all the time. And like it's been like I think 3 or 4 years since I stopped watching TV. Like once in a while, I don't know why the Power series like grabs me, but it does. Like the super like living vicariously through these like super action like things I'll watch once in a while, but it has changed my life. Like I don't watch TV. People are always like, you didn't know this storm was coming? And I'm like, no, thug life. Like I do.
You just risk it for the biscuit over here. Yeah.
I don't even care. And it just like, it's so crazy how my life changed from not watching TV anymore. So I can't really speak on it. So now, since we got through that, I know you can speak on your favorite local artists.
Let me take a deep breath. Hands down, one of my favorite Denver artists is PG. He's not even from here, Mississippi to Maryland to the box, but he lyrically, like, bro's pretty untouchable in my head. A lot of people would argue, but he's incredible. Nello, Nello is one of my favorites too. She Who Won't Be Named. I would not be doing like the lady side of hip hop justice. July is an incredible artist as well. I mentioned her earlier. Producer, engineer, all of the fucking things. God, I could go on and on. Resurface is incredible. Ego is incredible. Binta is incredible. Albies for She's is incredible. But like the top ones that I stay on repeat would probably be PG, Nello, and She Who Won't Be Named.
Oh my gosh, she's so good.
She's incredible. Shout out to her. I'm flying out Saturday morning to go shoot a video with her in Memphis.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, so exciting. First music video.
I don't know what it is. So when I was 14 years old, like I was standing in the line at FYE the day that the Young Bucks CD dropped. Like I've loved that music since I was that little white girl in Fort Collins, not even knowing. Like, I laugh now as a parent because I, like, hear all the words hypersensitively now. I'm like, wow, like, who did I think I was back then? But I was obsessed. And, like Young Dolph is, like, probably, I still kind of, like, actually cry that he's gone because I loved him so much. You know what I'm saying? But that area, that's probably why I like her so much, because I've just loved the music that comes out of that area. So that's so tight that you get to go do that.
Yeah,
I listened to her little EP that she sent, and I was like, wow. I was speechless. I was like, wow.
Let's talk about her EP, because the reason why I love her so much is because one of the reasons why I love her so much, her stage energy is immaculate. Like, when you go to a concert, I feel like she's who you want to see. You know what I mean? That energy, she gets you hyped. You want to get up there and like fuck around and whip your hair around with her. And then on top of that, like, she's just so real and like unapologetically herself. She tells the story really well, like in her songs. And her performances lately have been like skits, and which is great because she does a lot of creative shit outside of just being an artist. Yeah, but she's fucking incredible.
I'm getting her on the podcast soon because
and I'm sure she'll definitely will. Yeah. But her EP, I was like super depressed and like going through some shit, and She said, "Bitch, I don't know why you haven't bought my new EP yet." And I listened to it right then, and I was weeping driving home, like, this bitch just smells me.
Yes,
But I'm lucky to call her a friend and like a colleague, associate, mentor. I'm very blessed for the access that I have to her, because she is just an incredible being, for sure.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be hard to switch gears after that conversation, but we can't talk about music the whole episode. So tell me a little bit more about, we talked about your photography business and like all these things that you do. How do you find the balance between being a small business owner, living your life, being a single mother, and working? Because that's a lot.
People always tell me that's a lot, but it doesn't feel like that. And the goal is that I'm building an empire, right? So, my foundation has to be sturdy. So it doesn't matter what that work looks like now. Like, I have to get there. At this point, it's not for me. I'm lucky to have found like a course that makes me happy, in this industry, and taking pictures of like artists and people that I adore. But realistically, like, it's about creating stability for my kids and generational wealth, and, just things that I never even got to like dream about being a reality. And I'm not even halfway through this life, and I'm accomplishing milestones that people in my family have never even like pictured, talking to my aunt who lives like, her life is not lackluster, but she didn't get to dream big and accomplish big. She got to survive, and so one of my friend's husbands took his life to suicide, and she wanted to go to a Cocaine Anonymous meeting. And I went, even though being in those meetings is a trigger for me from my childhood. And someone told me the reward of surviving life is that you get to live. And that shit was like a gut check to me, because I'm like, you spent so long just running through life trying to survive and like get to the next moment and get to the next paycheck and get to the next food, and like now you get to live a little bit. And while you're living, your kids get to see like what you're building and see that like hard work pays off, because it's just me. Like, my younger daughter's dad is, very helpful. He does his part with her, but like altogether, like, it's just me, 5 days to 7 days out of the week, it's just mom hustling her ass off, just mom explaining like, I don't have the money to go buy you Nikes all the time. I can buy you Nikes like once a month, if that, because Nikes are expensive. Or explaining like, I can buy you 3 pairs of shoes from Walmart, but I can only buy you 1 pair of shoes for the next 6 months if we buy them here, type shit. But those are life lessons that are important, because when I was in my devil days, I remember hanging out with like trust fund babies and people who had been spoon fed their whole life and blew their inheritance on a feeling, and it was definitely drug addiction, but drugs, you know what I mean? And I just couldn't fathom to be given everything in life like so easily and get lost. But that's the power of not knowing those struggles. And that's why I'm very present with my kids. Like, when I fucked up and I went to jail, I didn't lie to my kids about it. I was like, I broke the law and I had to go. Like, that's cause and effect. That's how life works. When you get in trouble at school, they call me and then you get your ass beat. That's cause and effect, So I'm blessed, though, to be able to give them those lessons, because the lessons that I received like that didn't come like that. It was, don't cry or you get your ass beat, go make this money or you don't fucking eat at all, or go make this money or we don't have somewhere to sleep tonight. So I can never take anything now. Like, nothing ever feels heavy when you come from the mud and the trenches. Like, that you're going to get to the next moment. So now that I'm getting to live, that's my reward. And I can't think of like a better way to say that.
You said that amazingly. I've had chills like since you like a little bit back. I'm like, wow. Because for me, that is why I decided, like, I had a great job. I was making a lot of money. I had this house. I had his and her Audis. I had all of these things. And people, like, older people, parents, like, colleagues would be like, you got it going on. But it didn't feel like that. It still felt heavy. But when I started just living in my morals and in my purpose and like getting up, even though like the last 10 days I literally like DoorDash is for the birds, but like I do it and I like literally have fun while I'm doing it. I have like a little fanny pack and I'm like, oh,
not the fanny pack.
Let's go. And it's like, when you learn to just enjoy it and you learn to live instead of, like you said, survive, it's just crazy how so many problems disappear. And a lot of it is mindset. Like, when you are always talking about the problems. And when you're
That's
always
all you
focused,
find.
that's all you're going to find. So it's like super important to recognize like us doing this metamorphosis over the summertime. Like I spent a lot of time thinking about my trauma, but it was really the healing experience for me was talking about it and like letting it go. Like
Yep.
putting it out there, but then bam, it's gone. And I've really
It's like
recognized
it's no longer a secret anymore. You know, I can let it go because everyone knows, even though, you know, it's select people, but like that's how it felt. When
exactly.
I know exactly what you mean. Like now everyone knows, so I don't have to
out.
hold it anymore.
I don't have to hold on to it anymore.
Yep, precisely.
And I got real with myself because a lot of times when you experience trauma, you, especially when it's other people that inflict trauma on you, they spend so much time telling you it didn't happen. They spend so much time telling you they didn't do that.
Really
and they put so much energy to telling everybody else. And for me, it doesn't matter if 2 people see it or if the whole world sees it. To me, I was honest with myself and I was able to. And now I'm not thinking about 5 years ago. I'm not thinking about all this stuff that I went through. I'm thinking about where I'm going when I'm not trying to be present. Because one thing I've really learned is I've been like trying and talking about retirement since I was like 16 years old. I've been telling people, you really think you're going to be able to sell drugs in your 40s to these kids? Like, no, nobody's going to want to do that. Like, I've been talking
they mail them now. That's crazy to me. That's just crazy to me.
I've been like thinking about the future more because I was because I was running from the past. And I'm really recognizing like, today you're doing the things that like 14, 16, 21-year-old you would be like, she's so tight. Like, I want to hang out with her. And so I'm like, why wouldn't I enjoy it? Like, why wouldn't I like go stand by the river and do nothing? Why wouldn't I like just give myself this grace through this? Because we survived. It's time to live. Like, if we were supposed to be taken out, like, I'd be out by now. You know what I'm saying? Like, if that shit was meant to break me, I wouldn't be here. So,
one of the best things, and I know we got to wrap it up, but one of the best things is, I get to raise my 16-year-old me. My middle daughter is like my mini me for sure. Looks like me, acts like me, talks like me, but I get to watch her enjoy the things that I didn't. And in a way, it's like healing to my inner child because I'm like, I get to raise you the way that nobody ever wanted to raise me. And it's such a beautiful thing that she gets pissed off because she can't have a cell phone. Yo, I'm like, I was pissed off because I didn't have a blanket. Like,
I know, I stopped doing that so much to my son and giving all these kids lectures when I was young. Like, at my son's birthday party, I had this wooden spoon.
But I gotta be mad.
I do it too. Yeah. But I had this wooden spoon out, and I told all these little kids, I was like, my stepmom used to spank me with one of these. Like, that's what it was. It wasn't a little stick from outside. It was a full on, like,
it was whatever and the was look on their
faces, they were like, what? And I'm like, yeah, ask her about it. She'll probably cry because
I grew up in a generation when anyone could whip your ass.
Yes,
like any adult
like
could
teachers,
whip your ass.
Like anybody, they were like no,
pop
don't
off
be
at
doing
the mouth.
that. And don't be like trying to tell on your parents, and don't be doing this, and don't be doing that.
That's wild to me now too. Like how like I would have never like my mom punched me in the mouth in 6th grade and fucked my lip up, right? And I went to school probably like 3 days later, and it looked like just a cut. And I told one person, one little bitch, she told somebody else, and they told the counselor, and the counselor called CPS. I didn't show up to school for 2 weeks. And we can guess why, you know what I mean? But that's crazy to me too. CPS was much more lenient back then. Now I know people that have like had their life turned upside down because of like a random phone call from an ex-girlfriend, and I'm just like, that's bananas to me.
And I know it happened to me too. I remember when my son was little, and somebody called and said that I just had a bag of ecstasy pills chilling on the ground, like at my house. And I was like, what? Like, you think I would just leave that laying around? But I had to take all these tests, and I had to do this because I was a young mom. And I remember being like, damn, like, why weren't people like this, like, for real?
Yeah,
like,
when my mom was whipping my ass up and down the street, why did nobody say shit? Nobody said shit.
Yes, for sure. So, before we wrap this up, those are all great points. I'm super excited about this episode. But how do we find you? How do we get in touch with the queen?
So social media is probably the best way. Long_live_the_queen23 is my regular social, or the Right One Photography is my business page.
And it's just the Right One Photography, all one word?
Yeah, all one word.
Perfect.
So super simple to find me on my business, but they're both tied together, so you can reach me.
Yeah, I'll put it in the little comments.
Yeah,
or
I
whatever.
also have a link tree, so feel free to check that out. There's some cool stuff on there as well.
I love it. I love it. Any last words before we wrap this up?
When you were first going over this, you said some inspirational words, and so I do just want to tell like anybody listening, if you're having second doubts, like let my voice like be a resounding voice in your head in these moments. Like, keep fucking going. I promise you, it's worth it. The payout's worth it. Even if it's just for yourself, it's fucking worth it. So keep fucking going, whether it's just taking another breath of air, jumping off that fucking cliff into like a new opportunity or a new lifestyle or a new relationship. Like, keep fucking going. Like, it's worth it. Hard work always pays off, no matter what anybody else tries to tell you.
Whew. Well, on that note, stay safe, stay fly, and stay high.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna